Hello everyone, this is Michele Colo with EVERFI. Welcome to our webinar today. It is now 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. for folks on the East Coast. It is time to start our webinar today. And I'd also like to say that this is our last webinar in 2017. We've run, I think, around 20 this year. So thanks to all of you that have been with us to the different events, and to the ones who are joining us just today. We hope to see you again in 2018. We will also have a very rich webinar schedule next year. So about me very quickly, I'm a demand generation here at EVERFI, and one of my responsibility is to organize the higher ed webinars. So again, thank you for being with us and for accepting the invite. I'd like to mention just a few housekeeping items before we start. If you'd like to ask questions, you'll notice there is a question box at the right-hand side of your screen. That is just, you can just type your questions in there as they come up. We'll see them and they'll be recorded on our end. And we'll try to get to them at the end of the presentation if we have time. Also, a copy of the slides and a full recording of the event will be sent to everybody on the call in a follow-up email. So no need to worry about that. It will be sent to you, and you'll be able to keep a copy for your file. Lastly, I'd like to mention that when you log out of this event, right at the end, there'll be a short poll. That's the way for us to collect your feedback on the event. And so if we do value feedback greatly, so if you could it takes about 2 to 3 minutes to complete. If you take that short time after the webinar has ended to tell us what you thought, it's very much appreciated, and we'll review your feedback very, very closely. So thanks to those of you who will do that for us at the end. Without further ado, I would like to start introducing our presenters today so we can jump into the presentation right away. Today I'm joined by my colleague, Holly Ryder-Milkovich, who is the Senior Director of Prevention Education here at EVERFI. Many of you know her, have been at other webinars before, or have met her and have heard her talks at conferences. Before joining us, Holly directed the Sexual Assault Prevention and Awareness Center at the University of Michigan. She provided expertise to President Obama's White House Task Force on Best Practices for Campus-Based Sexual and Intimate Partner Violence Prevention and Response efforts, and represented 4-year colleges and universities in the Federal Negotiated Rulemaking Committee for the 2013 Violence Against Women Act reauthorization. She brings over 2 decades of experience in violence prevention and response in higher education to her role at EVERFI. Also with Holly is Karen Langman. She's the Content Product Manager for EVERFI's Sexual Assault Prevention courses. Prior to joining EVERFI, Karen developed curriculum for and taught online courses in numerous graduate and undergraduate departments while she was earning her PhD in English rhetoric. Jennifer Oyan is an account executive here at EVERFI, and she strategically supports campuses in deploying compliance and prevention programs around the country. So I'd like to kick it off to Holly, who will be our first presenter today, and we can get started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michele. And I just want to echo again the thanks for all of you who have joined us throughout the year, as well as those of you, everyone on the call who has made time during this very hectic time of year on campuses to be with us for this webinar. Let's go ahead and move to the first slide, if we could, Karen. Thank you. Jumping right in, looking at our webinar agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about why ongoing education is so important, really touching both on those important compliance pieces and also the prevention framework that supports ongoing education. We're going to share with you how EVERFI approaches prevention education, not only in this course, but in all of our courses. Get a chance for you to see the new amazing course I'm so excited about, Sexual Assault Prevention Ongoing Education Demonstration, which my colleague Karen is going to walk you through. And then my colleague Jennifer is going to get on and share with you a little bit about how this course situates itself in the entire landscape of the work that we're doing at EVERFI to support higher education in their prevention, compliance, health, and safety needs. And we are committed to making sure that we have time at the end of this webinar for your questions and answers, which we know from previous webinars is some of the most valuable content to you. So let's go ahead and get started. If we can move to the next slide. Thank you, Karen. So why ongoing education? I'll tell you, as I was working to develop this course, I had flashbacks to my time as a campus practitioner when we were deploying EVERFI's courses for sexual assault prevention on our campus. And at every call with our wonderful customer service manager and at all of the conferences that I attended, I've really badgered folks, please make this ongoing course, because I knew that it was something that our campus needed and I expected other campuses did as well. Well, lo and behold, when I joined EVERFI, one of my first projects was to collaborate with many other colleagues here to develop the course that I had so desperately wanted. And so I'm particularly excited to share this course with you and really to talk about ongoing education. Go ahead and move forward if we could, please. Thank you. So let's start now at the floor in thinking about what are those really important compliance measurements. And when we're thinking about compliance as it relates to prevention education, we're going to be focusing in specifically right now on the CLEARI Act and those CLEARI Act training compliance regulations and the actual statutory language itself. And I think it's really important just to note here that there has been a lot of talk over the past 6 months swirling around higher education about some of the changes that are potentially on the horizon. And, you know, I think that it's really important for all of us to remember that while these changes that could potentially occur may have significant impact on the response front, and we'll be watching that like a hawk and ensuring that all of our courses respond to any changes, what it doesn't do is impact the requirements for prevention that are embedded in the CLEARI Act. So these are components of our compliance expectations that have been in place and that are continuing to be in place and that are not under discussion right now for change. So make sure that that's a message that is being communicated sort of up and down your chain as you're looking at continuing to develop out your prevention efforts. So when we're looking at these CLEARI Act training requirements, there, of course, is the ongoing, the primary prevention training requirements. And it's really exciting to note that overwhelmingly campuses report that they are meeting this requirement. And we see this not only in our work, but there have been other benchmarks as well that have been shared nationally that reflect this. I'm going to note that as I've been working with campuses throughout the country, not only in my time at EVERFI, but beforehand, annual ongoing education, that ongoing component, is where campuses tend to experience more struggle. And that struggle really is both in delivering programming to populations that can be harder to capture as an audience and in documenting the reach of the programming and its impact. The other additional important things that I think any prevention practitioner should keep in mind as they're thinking about that annual ongoing training is that annual ongoing education should address all of the topics that are currently required to be delivered to all incoming student and staff members. In fact, the exact language from the CLEARI handbook is that your ongoing prevention and awareness campaigns must meet all of the same standards as the primary prevention and awareness programs provided to incoming students and new employees. And so campuses can, and I hope will, provide prevention education and interventions that focus on additional campus-specific topics beyond what is stipulated in those regulations. Looking at that incoming required content is a good floor to focus on for those campuses that are making determinations about where to focus what can be limited time resources and limited other kinds of resources in their ongoing prevention education components. Also not included on this slide, but really critically important here, are that the CLEARI regulations also require training to be culturally relevant, inclusive of diverse communities' identities, sustainable, responsive to community needs, and informed by research assessed for value, effectiveness, or outcome, and that consider those environmental, risk and protective factors across the socioeconomic, the socio-ecological environment. So if we can move on to the next slide. Thank you so much. So you'll note here that when we're looking then at these principles of effective prevention, and so these were laid out by Maury Nation and his colleagues in 2003, many of the requirements that you see embedded in those regulations for the Clery Act for ongoing education align really well with these principles of effective prevention. So you'll see here, culturally relevant, inclusive of diverse communities and identities. All of these pieces are reflected in these principles of effective prevention. But I want to focus here on three specific components. The principle of sufficient dosage, of efforts being appropriately timed, and that those efforts be outcomes evaluated, because these three elements are particularly critical when we're thinking about population-wide ongoing education efforts. So let's look for a minute then at sufficient dosage. This is about the how much that is at the core of ongoing prevention education. So the language of dosage here clearly connects to the public health roots. And it's about ensuring that you're delivering training with a frequency that will ensure that positive impact is sustained. So sufficient dosage is also really important in terms of outcomes evaluation. So when you're thinking about that prevention education programming, you can only measure progress over time and be able to have, sufficient data that demonstrates that the work that you're doing has impact on your campus when you have multiple prevention efforts that are able to be evaluated. And probably it should go without saying by now, but I do believe it's important to continue to reiterate that one and done programs. So those programs where, for example, you may bring in, a single speaker for one day to address these issues, no matter how effectively they may be able to address them at the time. A one and done program is unlikely to accomplish either the goal of shifting student attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors in a positive direction that will eventually lead us to less harm happening for students on campus, or the also important goal of compliance with those federal and state mandates around these issues. So thinking then about appropriately timed, if sufficient dosage is about how much, this principle is about when. And this is where your deep knowledge of your campus community is really important. You want to be sure that your prevention efforts are reaching their audience at a time when they're most likely to benefit from the training. So some questions that you might want to consider are questions like, what is happening on campus that might impede this particular intervention's effectiveness in reaching the audience? Is there a big campus-wide event? Are students buckling down like they might be right now to complete the rest of their semester and therefore are unlikely to attend or to give as much attention to the programming that you're delivering? Is it the Friday before spring break? And then conversely, thinking about, are there opportunities to harness timing that might have maximal impact, like delivering messaging in proximity to high impact or high risk days on campus, or potentially in support of significant campus events, or in response to an event that may have occurred on campus that requires an appropriate level of response? And last but not least, as we're focusing in on just a few of all of these really important principles of effective prevention, I want to focus here on outcomes evaluation. So clearly this is embedded within the Clery Act regulations. It's something that we think is really important. And when we're looking at it as it relates to ongoing education, what we're driving for here is data that is several-fold. So it's whether or not you have information about whether the program is successfully conveying the learning outcomes you've outlined for this audience. So key there is that you have learning outcomes that have been identified for all of the interventions that you're delivering to your students, and that you have a means by which you would be able to evaluate whether or not those have been effective. Whether there's a positive change in students, for example, knowledge about these issues, or their attitudes related to potentially their willingness to intervene in situations of harm. All of this data can help give you specific information about your students, about your staff, your faculty to help shape that additional programming that will harness your campus community's specific strengths and address the areas of concern that emerge from the data that you've delivered. You could go to the next slide, please, Karen. Thank you very much. So for those of you who have joined us before on webinars or perhaps seen us present, this is going to be no surprise to you, but I think it is so important. This is our framework for comprehensive prevention. And of course, you know, the principles of effective prevention that I was just discussing are most effective when they're enacted with a framework of comprehensive prevention that systematically supports and promotes prevention, starting from the foundation of institutionalization and moving up through critical processes. So looking at you know, whether or not we're evaluating our programs effectively, whether or not we're sharing information with our community, through policy into that programming, the tip of the spear, where some folks think prevention both begins and ends. So you can learn more about applying this framework to your campus prevention efforts at campuspreventionnetwork.com. Visit the site, take the pledge, join hundreds of your peers in committing to best practices in prevention. A couple of other pieces here as well. Going to move forward if we could, please, Karen. Thank you. Really quickly, this is one example of resource available from EVERFI to support your campus in developing those effective prevention programs. If you look in the chat window, you'll see the URL white paper that will lead you directly to an opportunity to download. And I encourage you to download the paper for an even deeper content dive related to implementing effective prevention on your campus. So if we could go forward to the next slide, please. Again, and this is a great slide that really summarizes a lot of what we've been talking about as it relates to both compliance and best practice, that when we're looking at impact, we know that we're going to need ongoing education. We can move to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. And one more forward. All right, so what is that EVERFI approach? These are the philosophical foundations for all of the courses that we build. And that is important because all of our sexual assault prevention courses for students complement each other and adhere to this core foundation. So looking here, starting at positive framing, we know that most students want to have healthy behaviors, want to support a healthy community for others. And so our courses really focus in on supporting that healthy majority of students on campus and ensuring that the work that we're doing with your students within these courses really has that positive framing and that positive social normings message. We also ensure that we have inclusive content. And so when we're thinking about inclusive content, that goes to all of the different areas of how we build those courses, how it looks, what kinds of images are included in the courses, what kind of language that we're choosing, so that all students can see themselves, we hope, reflected in the courses that we build. But we're also really inclusive of different social experiences and different choices that students may make, so that when students are taking the course and, for example, they may choose to not engage in sexual activity at this point in their lives or perhaps ever, but they'll still see relevance and value in the courses, and that they'll see the choices that they're making be actively reflected as well. When we're thinking about student-centeredness, we're also looking at how we build our courses with the support of significant student engagement, and my colleague Karen will talk more about that, but also that our courses focus on peers speaking to peers, that students are modeling appropriate behavior for each other within the courses and sharing their perspective. So this student-centeredness is also part of how we develop that positive social norms perspective within your student body. When it comes to empowerment, certainly bystander intervention is one piece of it, but we also look at empowerment as those skill building components to really help students form the healthy relationships that they tell us that they want and that they deserve. We also have the live advocacy support and live chat part of our programs as well. And those are designed to empower students who may have already experienced harm and are at the point where they're ready to reach out for additional support from others. And last but not least, when we're looking at leveraging those values, We are asking students to consider what is important to them, what do they believe about themselves, and how do they engage with others, and for them to make decisions based on those values. So this calls to value as a framework certainly resonates with our faith-based partners, but we have found that it is a powerful opportunity for self-reflection for all learners and a way for the course to really speak to them and what they care about. So if we could move on to the next slide, please, then. So going very quickly, and then how are we building on the course that many folks have already delivered, our sexual assault prevention course for undergraduate students. We are looking to, again, build on knowledge that they've already received from their courses that helps with clery compliance, and it's that best practice. So here are some examples of the building on the knowledge from our sexual assault prevention undergraduate course. So whereas freshmen who are incoming are more likely to be reflecting on or questioning what they value, we know that ongoing students are more likely to have a better awareness or understanding of their values, and this course reflects it. Our ongoing course is also building on the understanding of sexual harassment and stalking by asking students to identify more nuanced examples of sexual harassment and stalking in the college context. It focuses on skill building by providing opportunities for students to examine situations where they're intervening to prevent or to stop a friend from committing harm against someone else they know by modeling effective conversations and strategies. We're doing a deeper dive into coercion, some of the less obvious methods of coercion, for example, emotional manipulation. Encouraging learners to trust their experience and instincts, especially looking at situations where consent is unlikely, and encourages them to intervene in more mature and assertive ways when they have an established relationship with someone who may be in a risky situation, which is more likely to be the case for those students who are beyond their first semester of their freshman year. So those are just a few examples of the way that we're scaffolding that initial effort for education for those incoming students and really scaling it up developmentally to meet the emerging needs of your continuing student population. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask Karen to move the slide forward and turn it over to you, Karen, to talk more about how we've developed the course that we're so excited to share today.
Great. Thank you so much, Holly. That was really wonderful. I'm going to go excited to talk to everybody today very briefly about course development process here at EVERFI, and then dive into a demo so I can show you live what some of the highlights of each of the modules of the course. So research and collaboration. Our course development process begins with research, and here at EVERFI, our research process is networked. So we analyze student feedback obtained from our courses, so course survey data and campus climate surveys, as well as partner feedback and subject matter expertise, research and practice, as well as our own primary research. So student focus groups and our newly formed Sexual Assault Advisory Council. Keeping our courses relevant and effective is an iterative process based on all of these areas of research and collaboration, but especially informed by the expertise of our partners. Our Sexual Assault Advisory Council represents diverse institutions and roles, as well as geographic diversity and diversity of all types of student populations. And it's instrumental in helping us to understand the landscape of best practices. So it provides us with unique insight into how our courses impact our learners. Our sexual assault prevention courses offer numerous opportunities for customization. All of those are listed in the right-hand column of the page that we're looking at. These include the ability to place your school's logo, insert your own images, for instance, on the welcome and closing letters, and a place to upload your school's policies, so your sexual misconduct policy, reporting options, so confidential employees and resources, and campus-based and local support resources, as well as 6 strategic places to input custom videos of your own throughout the course. So lots of opportunities for customization and making the course significant to and resonant with your university and your students. So diving right in, at this point, I'm really excited to jump into the course and share and talk through a few of the highlights from each module. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And I will jump right into the course. So Module 1, our introductory module, the objectives of this module are for learners to understand that sexual assault impacts all of us, even if we haven't personally experienced this kind of harm. To recognize the prevalence of sexual assault on college and university campuses, and to understand the importance of learning about sexual assault in order to help a friend or a peer heal from this harm, and as a result, contribute to a safe and supportive campus community. And the approach in this course really echoes and reinforces the same positive tone as the undergraduate course and all EVERFI courses, in fact. However, ongoing students are encouraged to take a leadership role on campus. So where we're coming from with that means that now that these learners, now that our ongoing students have had some experience and developed more social capital, perhaps on campus, we encourage them to play a more active role in contributing to a positive campus experience than perhaps their younger peers may feel comfortable or confident doing. Jumping ahead to Module 2. So what makes a good relationship? Module 2 is called Values, Identities, and Relationships. And in this module, learners reflect on their values. Activities in the course require them to think critically about how those values may have evolved as a result of their college experiences. So, whereas incoming freshmen are more likely to be reflecting on or questioning what they value, ongoing students are assumed to have a better awareness and understanding of those values. Other activities within this module require learners to reflect on some of the people and things that have been influential in shaping their identity. And this module also defines the qualities and characteristics of healthy relationships of all kinds. So not only romantic or intimate relationships, as we know very well that not all students are interested in or currently engaging in sexual activity. One of the areas that distinguishes how content in the ongoing course builds on the undergraduate course is this activity called Healthy Approaches to Ending a Relationship. Here we teach learners about strategies for maturely and respectfully ending a relationship. So we recognize that ongoing students will likely have had experience with perhaps longer term or more committed relationships, and as a result, breakups. So learners are engaged in thinking through the qualities of healthy relationships, but also challenged to practice mature, healthy ways of ending a relationship that just may not be working for them. Jumping ahead to Module 3. So this activity is called, Is This Sexual Harassment? And here, this represents one of the objectives of this module, which is for learners to understand what sexual harassment and stalking are, and most importantly, what these behaviors may look like in specifically a college context. Students are also challenged to recognize when someone is exhibiting this kind of behavior, and if the situation is safe enough to do so, step in to address and stop the behavior. So this is another example of how the ongoing course extends the foundational knowledge in the undergraduate course, encouraging learners to go the extra step to address this kind of behavior in addition to recognizing it in the first place. Whereas the undergraduate course approaches sexual harassment and stalking by defining these terms and emphasizing to learners that this kind of behavior should be taken seriously and not tolerated, the ongoing course builds on that knowledge by asking students to identify more nuanced examples of sexual harassment and stalking, again, in college contexts. It also focuses on skill building by modeling effective conversation and strategic actions that students can take to prevent or stop a friend from sexually harassing or potentially stalking someone else. Okay, jumping into Module 4, consent, coercion, and stepping in. This module frames consent within the larger context of healthy communication. So something that is really unique among prevention education resources. We know from our student focus groups and our subject matter experts research that students are sometimes confused about or even resistant to the concept of consent because they feel it's a very formal and non-natural kind of conversation. So based on this, we have been careful to frame consent to sexual activity as similar as consent to other things. So suggesting that it's something that we do all of the time as we make daily decisions throughout our lives. Positioning consent to sexual activity as something that isn't really that different or even uncomfortable as learners may assume. So as you can see here, we present consent as something that is normal, healthy, clarifying, empowering, something that often changes throughout your experience with someone, emphasizing that what someone may be comfortable with, what they want, and what they don't want often changes. So it's important to be aware of and respectful of others' boundaries. The scenarios and learner engagement activities in this section offer a more nuanced, challenging example of giving and asking for consent. So overall, a deeper dive into coercion and some of the less obvious methods of coercion, like emotional manipulation. So on that note, this module offers 6 different types of coercion, as well as strategies for preventing or diffusing problematic situations regarding when students recognize situations where coercion looks like it might be possible. So stepping in, bystander intervention. So this module, in addition to content on consent and coercion, provides learners with numerous effective strategies for stepping in when observing a problematic situation or a situation that appears concerning. It encourages learners to trust their experience and instincts regarding how they read situations where consent appears to be unlikely, and encourages them to intervene in more mature and assertive ways when they have an established relationship with someone who may be in a risky situation. So whereas in the undergraduate course where we position these strategies for stepping in a different order because we realize that undergraduate students are still developing their confidence and still developing their experience and social capital on campus and ability to step in, here in the ongoing course we have intentionally presented our strategies leading with direct as, again, we're trying to encourage students to take a more active role in contributing to the safe campus communities that they want to live in. Okay, jumping ahead to Module 5, reporting options and responding to a survivor. This module provides learners with information about reporting options and procedures, types of employees like confidential employees and responsible employees, and teaches learners language for showing empathy when communicating with survivors of sexual assault. So one of the ways that this module builds on foundational knowledge about sexual assault is by exploring how sexual assault can occur in relationships. So the video that I'm going to show, I'm going to mute it, although you should know that it does, the entire course does have narration, so it does have audio components, but for the sake of the webinar, I'm going to mute it. And so in this video, a series of knowledge check questions are integrated within the video that model a survivor of sexual assault disclosing an incident. So this shows learners ways of responding in mature and resourceful ways, as in the undergraduate course, while taking a deeper dive into the psychological effects of trauma, reinforcing the importance of a supportive friend to a survivor's recovery. Okay, and now I will hand it over to Jennifer.
Great. Well, thanks, Karen, so much for walking us through those elements of the ongoing course. Just really excited to share how this new sexual assault prevention course for ongoing students really fits into how we at EVERFI support our partners. And also just wanted to thank again everyone for joining today to learn more about how we are helping institutions reach the broader student population with this important education, while recognizing that sexual assault impacts institutions really at every level. And so I know there's a good mix of participants on the webinar who either currently partner with EVERFI, some might be new or newer to us. So just to get everyone on the same page, EVERFI has been the largest provider of online prevention training for the last 15 years, long before the compliance mandates that some of which we've talked about today were in place. And we've been committed to training on topics like sexual assault prevention and alcohol prevention and others, not because we had to, but because it was the right thing to do. And so as the compliance landscape has evolved over time and become more complex and comprehensive, as Holly shared, we're seeing issues like sexual assault sit at the crux of compliance and prevention. And we are supporting now over 1,700 higher ed institutions on both fronts, given how pervasive these issues are. And so we've created now the largest network of higher ed institutions working to make an impact on these critical topics. And understanding there are a lot of pieces to an effective and comprehensive prevention program, we wanted to distill those into some key elements we feel are critical to getting this right. And so Karen, if you can forward, thanks so much. We wanted to share some insights around these specific elements. And first of which is compliance, which we know is an important motivator for a lot of institutions to be aligned with those federal requirements mandating the same standards of sexual assault prevention and education for both new and incoming students, as well as all continuing students. When we think about content, ultimately, engaged learners learn better. So how do we provide students with content that is engaging, that's iterated upon annually? Since being our human selves, we see engagement really drop when institutions try to deploy the same thing over and over again. So how do we present material in a way that will facilitate the internalization of this critical content? Moving on to design, it plays a super important role here too. So we use a host of interactive learning strategies to support students who learn in a variety of ways, whether it's audio, visual, case studies, to support the wide variety of schools of all different shapes and sizes who we work with. Another component of design that's incredibly important to us is accessibility. So as an organization, we've seen that conversation develop over many years now, and perhaps 15 years ago, we didn't see a lot of schools asking about accessibility, and now it's a non-starter in a lot of cases. And so EVERFI's courses, including this new annual ongoing sexual assault prevention course, meet WCAG 2.0 AA accessibility standards. So there are voiceovers, students can use screen readers, and we are committed to ensuring that all students can participate in this really critical education. And the last component of design I'll mention is just the nature of having a private experience with these really important topics. And we understand that these issues can be really sensitive. Perhaps someone might not be super comfortable asking a question, sharing an opinion candidly, even in a small group setting. So our hope is to help institutions provide every student the opportunity to engage with this important material in a personal and individual way to get access to the knowledge and resources that they might need. looking at administration. I think something Holly touched on earlier was the challenges that we hear, not just in developing, changing up, maintaining content year after year after year, but how do we deliver this education? How do we track this education? And leveraging technology is the most efficient way to launch a global campus-wide sexual assault prevention program, to be able to share information consistently, to allow for customizations, requiring electronic signatures of really important policies, and having that all on file in a clean and organized way to showcase the great work that you all are doing in the event you do need to provide these records. Which brings me to the last component, which is data. And so our commitment to data goes back to our mindset that online education, it isn't the end-all be-all. Online education is a great mechanism to deploy training in a scalable and efficient way at a population level. And it lends itself well to capturing critical information across your student body. So certainly we provide progress data around enrollment numbers and completion numbers for your records. But in addition, we also provide insights into knowledge gains, into attitudinal and behavioral shifts, social norm perceptions. So as an administration, you can understand where your strengths are, where there are areas for reinforcement, and all that information can better inform your broader compliance and prevention strategy in a really effective and purposeful way. And so if we move on to the next slide, Karen, I think with all of those components that we talked about, we really see those as an ecosystem all intersecting with each other. And where we've seen a similar kind of convergence is in higher ed through this coming together of various offices, various departments. We've seen incredible engagement from provosts and presidents, because ultimately it's everyone's responsibility to provide a healthy and safe community for students, for faculty, and for staff. And because there are so many critical topics that we either have to or want to train on in higher ed, what we provide as an organization, we provide a solution that is global, that is an enterprise level offering to align with the needs and the priorities across all of these different stakeholders. And so that brings us to our library. And so Karen, if you want to go forward, thanks so much. And so one theme that we've seen kind of bubble to the surface over time is that because there are so many important topics we want to educate on, we've seen a lot of schools needing to use a lot of different vendors to kind of piece together something that covers so many different issues, given the breadth of content we want to educate on, whether it is Title IX or CLARI or harassment and discrimination prevention or FERPA or alcohol abuse, accommodating disabilities, now NCAA with athletic-specific sexual assault prevention. And using different vendors for these different pieces has sometimes resulted in either a fragmented deployment process or fragmented data. And ultimately, these issues go beyond any one department or any one school. And these issues impact all facets of higher education. And it's been really amazing to engage with so many partners looking to strengthen their holistic prevention and compliance strategy. And at EVERFI, we continue to be committed to providing a solution that enhances your great efforts to move the needle and drive impact in a positive way, because all of these topics, sexual assault, harassment, diversity, alcohol abuse, all these topics are important enough to the success and the strength of the institutions that we support to deserve a unified and a cohesive approach. And so at this point, Michele will launch a poll. You all have had the opportunity to see parts of the sexual assault prevention ongoing course. And so for those of you who want to see the course in full and perhaps connect with members of our team to answer any additional questions, please check yes, please. And we will follow up with additional demo information.
Okay, we've had almost 50% of folks respond to the poll. If we could just get a couple more people, let's get it up to 50% and we'll close that poll and move on to your questions. Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and close the poll. And for those of you who answered yes, please, you can be sure that someone will get back to you to make sure that you have an opportunity to demo that full course. Now, jumping right into your questions, so a question that a number of you have had concerns the length of the course. So, Jennifer, can you share a little bit about the length of the course?
Yeah, absolutely. So the course is designed to be approximately between 30 and 45 minutes. And of course, seat time varies by learner, but what we've been really thoughtful about is how do we strike a balance between needing to cover all of the critical compliance and prevention content areas, and also to make the course a length that helps drive completion as well.
Great, thank you. Looks like another question coming in from a campus saying, we do events like speakers, Take Back the Night, film screening, classroom presentations each year. Does that meet compliance requirements? I'll go ahead and take this one. And, you know, these are really important activities. They have a lot of value to students, and, you know, and I do think that they can be a part of a comprehensive prevention plan. One thing that I want you to consider is that all campuses should be delivering to all current students and employees all of the content that's required to be delivered to incoming students and employees. And so the real challenge with Take Back the Nights and film screenings and classroom presentations alone is that it can be really hard to document that you've hit those key content areas and that the programming or campaigns were accessible and promoted to your entire population. So I think that it is, probably possible to meet compliance requirements, but one thing that, with those kinds of events and activities alone, I think one of the things that you'd want to be really conscientious about is making sure that you have really thorough documentation that it was presented to all folks on campus, that they had the ability to attend, that it was promoted to your entire population, and that you're really rigorous about documenting that all of those content areas required for incoming students and staff are also included in those events. So, those are some considerations that I would encourage you to keep in mind. Okay. Another great question coming in. You guys have great questions. We have a lot of non-traditional age students on our campus. How does this course resonate with an older population? Another person asked about graduate student population as well, which I think addresses some of this concern also. And I'm wondering, can you take that question, please, Karen?
Hi there, sure. So this is a very serious and very, very good, important question because we're very committed to making sure that we customize our courses so that they're resonating with the population of users, of students that are using them. So the course activities for the ongoing course, the activities and the other types of learner engagement content are shaped around the realities of older students. We have kept that very foremost in our minds. So maybe part-time students or part-time employees, returning students from military or returning to school from for career development or training. If I had to think of an example, one of the first ones that comes to mind is called Daryl's Dilemma, and it's a case study. So it requires the learner to consider 3 separate answer choices and deliberate about the best answer choice. And so in this case study, the situation is that the learner has to make a decision about how to help a work colleague who is in an emotionally abusive relationship. So again, by interjecting even some slight nuances to context and the framing of the situation, we make sure that the content in the ongoing course is distinguished from the undergraduate course so that it resonates with, to encompass some of those students that we refer to as, I guess, non-traditional age students or part-time students, students with work experience or that are returning to school after a long break. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you so much. One additional piece I would note for the colleague who is interested in, delivering to graduate students, I would just note that we're about to, literally this month, start building the sexual assault prevention for graduate students course. So that's going to be a course that's really specifically focused on graduate students. Then ongoing graduate student piece is probably down the road for us, but from my experience, if that's a significant interest and need for your campus to have an ongoing course specifically for graduate students, to make that need known. Certainly we listen to and prioritize the voices of our partners when we're thinking about the course builds that we do. Have time for just one or two more questions. So another person wrote in to ask, what sort of survey data will schools get through this course? Jenna, can you take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So to go into a little bit more depth regarding the data, beyond the progress data, to be able to cleanly demonstrate who's completed the course this year versus last year, and so on, from a compliance standpoint, we were committed to doing a lot more than that, to be able to visualize the impact these courses are having, to provide you something tangible, saying, hey, this is how your students were thinking about these sexual assault prevention topics before the course. This is how they were thinking about these topics after the course. And therefore, this is where you can allocate additional resources, additional funding or time to build out ultimately a prevention strategy that is really aligned with the unique strengths and needs of your student community. And so we provide this type of knowledge gains, attitudinal and behavioral information actually in real time through our analytics platform. So you can access these insights and incorporate them into your planning process throughout the year by having access to all these different dashboards. And then in addition to the real-time analytics platform, we also provide data reports, what we call impact reports, where we take the most valuable data points collected and roll them up into an executive level summary because we know a lot of schools don't have the resources to do a super deep dive analysis, to go into SPSS and crosstab. And so we have our impact team, our research team, our product team being able to do this for you. And we have partners use these reports to present to President's Cabinet, to boards, and really, again, to demonstrate the academic and analytical rigor of your prevention programming. And so, happy to spend more time discussing the data with those who are interested in learning more, especially with the ongoing course. What we're so excited about is to be able to provide these insights now over time, to benchmark and to track trends and help our institutions really be more impactful with their training efforts.
Jen, I'm not going to let you off the hook yet. There's actually another question coming in I think you're perfect for. A number of folks have asked about, do your courses integrate with other learning management systems? And then as a part of that, will your ongoing and incoming alcohol and sexual assault courses have the easy login and access for all of the courses at one portal if you require multiple courses?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And I really appreciate that question. We know that so many of you on the webinar are doing a million things at once and wearing a lot of different hats. So as far as making the deployment, the tracking, the whole process a lot more streamlined, yes, we do have integration options to both streamline the deployment as well as the tracking process. So that, for example, students can go to a portal that they're already familiar with through your institution to access the course. And then on the back end, there are options to automate a completion report to sync up with your internal systems to update student progress in an automated way. And then to address, I guess, the second component of that question is, does this all live in one place is what I'm gathering? So with primary and annual ongoing, absolutely. That was a really big component of this. If we are going to really reach a broader student population with this important education, we need to make it easy for you all to facilitate that as well. So this is all in a unified platform, which is what we're really excited about.
All right, last question we'll be able to take for today, and actually I'll go ahead and take this one. Love this question from a colleague who's really seeking to hold us accountable, which is what we want. Does EVERFI have any data showing that your courses actually work to change behavior? So we do have a manuscript that's currently being reviewed for journal publication that's focusing specifically on the efficacy of our sexual assault prevention for incoming students. And what this research demonstrates is that we do have statistically significant improvements following our sexual assault prevention programs in perceptions of social norms, in empathy and support for victims, and in self-reported ability and intention to intervene to prevent sexual assault and relationship violence. And for us, these are really important, significant improvements for the courses. We have also just numerous peer-reviewed articles on our alcohol prevention course, Alcohol EDU. In fact, I'm really proud of the fact that we're listed in the SAMHSA's National Registry of Effective Programs, which is a pretty rare distinction in the prevention world. So where I am focused hardcore is our goal for our sexual assault preventions also to achieve this distinction. So this journal publication that's currently under review is the first step to get us there. So thank you so much for asking that question. And we're almost out of time. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Michele, to close us out. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ollie. Thank you, Karen and Jen, for having joined us today and having presented on ongoing prevention for sexual assault. Again, I'd like to thank, actually I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the whole EVERFI content team that has been instrumental in us being able to deliver these webinars for all of you each month. So it's been a tremendous year, and I'm really, really happy of the work we've done. Thanks to all of you again who have been with us today, who have been with us in the past. We really do look forward to seeing you in 2018. We'd like to wish you a good holiday time, and we look forward to seeing you again after the break. Just a couple housekeeping items for those of you who are still live with us. Again, copy of the slides, a full recording of the event will be sent to all of you in a follow-up email. There will be a call that initiates once the webinar is over, and that would be the way to collect our feedback from you on the event. So if you could take 2-3 minutes to complete it, that would be very much appreciated. Again, thanks to all of you. Happy holidays, and we'll see you again on EVERFI webinars in 2018. Have a great day.